how to perform Umrah simplified. Alhamdulillahi wahdah, wassalatu wassalamu ala man la nabiyya ba'dah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. Inshallah, in this short video, we're going to summarize the rites of Umrah from A to Z. How to perform Umrah simplified. Umrah can be summarized into four main segments, four main parts. The first part is at the Miqat when you put on your Ihram. The second part is going to the Kaaba and doing Tawaf 7 times. The third part is going between the two small mountains, Safa and Marwa. And last but not least, cutting or trimming your hair. Let's start with the first part. The first part, you're at the Miqat. And there are many Miqats. The main one, if you're coming through Medina, is Dhul Hulayfa. If you're not coming through Medina, then most likely you're coming through the aeroplane, and the aeroplane will announce the time that you're going past the boundary.
Time will be after 5 minutes.
Once you're at the boundary, you need to have your clothes ready and on. So for the men, you need to don 2 white sheets, 2 white garments like I'm wearing, one on top and one at the bottom. For the women, they can wear anything that is modest, that is covering, as long as it is not covering their face and they're not covering their hands. So the women, they're not allowed to wear a niqab. They're not allowed to have a niqab that is strapped on top. They are allowed to put a khimar, a loose khimar on top of their head that comes down, that's not tightened. There's a difference between the two. The Prophet ﷺ prohibited the niqab and the wearing of gloves for women. Everything else is covered modestly. As for the men, they're only allowed to wear those 2 sheets, those 2 garments that I'm wearing. Nothing else underneath. No shirt, no vest, no boxers, nothing. And you can have your sandals and your slides. You're not allowed to wear trainers and shoes. Once you've put the correct clothing on and you're at the boundary, then you need to make your intention. The intention here is to perform Umrah. And when you do Hajj, you have the intention for Hajj, but right now it's for Umrah. What do you need to say? The exact words are Labbaik Allahumma Umrah, 1 time. And you say that if you're doing it first time or every other time you want to do it for yourself. If you're doing it on behalf of somebody else, then you need to say the following words. Labbaik Allahumma Umrah an so and so. So you say, I perform Umrah on behalf of, and then you mention their name. And I'll give you an example. I'll do it for someone called Khalid, for example, who passed away, who was my friend. I say, Labbaik Allahumma Umratan an Khalid. And this will make you enter into the state of Ihram. The state of Ihram, ayyuha al-ikhwa, comes from the word haram. Haram means prohibited. Why is it called the state of Ihram? Because you have a state of halal where you're allowed to do certain things, and now when you go into the state of Ihram, it becomes haram for you. Examples: cutting your nails, perfume, having intercourse between spouses. All of these things become haram once you've entered into the state of Ihram and you've made your intentions. From the Miqat point up until you reach the Masjid al-Haram, then it's recommended for you to do the Talbiyah. The Talbiyah is Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik, innal hamda wan ni'mata laka wal mulk la sharika lak. You repeat this up until you get to the masjid. It's recommended for the men to say it out loud, and the women, they say it in their own voices, yani not loud. Once you get to the masjid, then you stop saying the talbiyah and you read the dua for entering the masjid. This dua is read when you go to any masjid, and specifically now when we are starting our Umrah, going into Masjid al-Haram. The dua is Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah, Allahumma ghfir li dhanbi waftah li abwaba rahmatik. And then you enter with your right foot, and now you've gone inside the Haram. You go to the second stage, the second part, going around the Kaaba. We're here now for part 2 of how to perform your Umrah. Behind me is the Kaaba. We're going to go around the Kaaba 7 times bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Whilst we're going around the Kaaba, we're going to begin at the Hajr al-Aswad, the black stone. You're going to raise your hand 1 time, your right hand facing the black stone, and you say in your first round, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. In every other round after that, you say Allahu Akbar 1 time. You do not copy anyone else that's around you. Some people will do it 2, 3 times. Some people might kiss their hands. We're not copying anyone. We're doing in accordance to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whilst we are walking, the men specifically have to have their right shoulder open. It's recommended for the brothers in the first 3 rounds to walk with haste, not to run, but to walk with haste. I want to show you an example. So you walk like this, and you don't run into anybody, you don't harm anyone, you just continue going like this for the first 3 rounds. An important thing that we need to mention when you are going to do your tawaf around the Kaaba is you must have tahara, you must have wudu. If your wudu breaks in any part of your tawaf, then you need to go out, make ablution, make your wudu, and start all over again in the most correct opinion. There is another opinion that says you continue from where you're going, but the Prophet ﷺ, he compared the tawaf to prayer. The only difference is you can talk whilst you're doing your tawaf. So if it's similar to prayer, if you break your wudu when you're praying, you have to start from again, just like that. You have to start your tawaf again. Wallahu a'lam. So the green light is directly pointing towards the black stone which is behind us, and that is the beginning of our tawaf. We raise our hand 1 time, as we said, and we say Bismillah Allahu Akbar in the first round, and every other round we say Allahu Akbar. So we're coming up to it right now until we get directly to the black stone, and we say Bismillah Allahu Akbar for first round and Allahu Akbar for every other round. Simple as that. You don't kiss your hand, you don't do it 2-3 times, 1 time alone. Now that you've started your tawaf, you can make any dua, supplication, remembrance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as you like, whether it's for yourself, for your parents. If you want to say Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, whatever you please to do. A side benefit I'll just mention quickly, between the black stone, Al-Hajar al-Aswad, and the door, between the door and the black stone is a place called Al-Multazam. If you make dua between those two, your dua is accepted, as mentioned in the hadith that is authentic. So now we're at the Yemeni corner, Al-Rukn al-Yamani. From this corner back to the start point, you're going to be reading a specific dua. The Prophet ﷺ instructed us to read. That dua is رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. And you just keep repeating that. You don't say any other dua up until you get back to the start point where you began from. The maqam of Ibrahim is where Ibrahim alayhi salam, he stood on top of when he was building the Kaaba with his son Ismail. There's no specific reward, there's no reward at all. There's no virtue connected to touching it or seeking blessings from it or the likes. The only thing that is connected to the maqam of Ibrahim is to pray 2 rak'ahs after you finish your tawaf. So when we finished our 7 rounds, in the last round, there is 2 opinions. Either you say Allahu Akbar or you do not say it. After you finish that, you go behind maqam Ibrahim, anywhere behind that you can find space. It doesn't have to be directly behind. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in the Quran, وَاتَّخِذُوا مِن مَقَامِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ مُصَلَّى, and take the maqam of Ibrahim as a place of prayer. After you finish your tawaf, you pray 2 rak'ahs behind the maqam of Ibrahim. The maqam of Ibrahim is the golden dome, if you like. Behind it, anywhere behind it that you find space, you pray your 2 rak'ahs. In the first rak'ah is recommended after reading Surah Al-Fatiha to read قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. And in the second rak'ah after read Fatiha, that you recite قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. This is the sunnah. It's recommended after finishing your tawaf to drink Zamzam water if it's easy for you. If there's too much traffic, then there's no problem, it's not obligatory. You can drink sitting down. Prophet ﷺ one time in Hajj, he drank standing up as well, so it's both allowed. Don't forget to say Bismillah. The Prophet ﷺ, he also said, الزمزم لما شرب له. Zamzam is for whatever you drank it for. So if you drink it and you make dua, Allah Azza wa Jalla will accept your dua, inshallah. Make dua before you drink. We're going to the Mas'a now. The Mas'a is the 3rd part of your Umrah. The Mas'a is basically the walk between Safa and Marwa. 2 mountains that Hajara, may Allah have mercy upon her, was walking between 7 times in order to look for water for her son Ismail. We're now heading to the Safa mountain, and this is the mountain behind us. Of course, it's gone smaller over the years. This is our beginning point. When you get to the Safa, you begin by reciting the verse, Inna as-Safa wal Marwata min sha'airillah, and you stop there. You don't complete the whole verse. Then you say, Nabda'u bima bada Allahu bih. We begin with that which Allah Azza wa Jal began with. And what did Allah begin with in the verse? He began with the Safa before Marwa. Indeed, Safa and Marwa are for the places of worship of Allah. So we begin with Safa, then we go on to Marwa. We only say this at the beginning of Safa facing the Kaaba. After we've done that, Then we read a adhkar that we're going to say 3 times. We're going to say it at Safa and at Marwa at every time that we stop. And that dua is that you say, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah, lahul mulku, wa lahul hamdu, wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. La ilaha illallah wahdahu, anjaza wa'dahu, wa nasara 'abdahu, wa hazama al-ahzaba wahdahu. You say this 3 times. In between each time that you read it, there's a dua that you can read. Your own dua, unrestricted. So you read it 1 time, you start making your duas. You read it a 2nd time, you start reading your duas, and you read it a 3rd time, and you start making duas. This one, you're gonna, as we said, repeat it in Safa and Marwa at every time you stop. That's the only thing you repeat here. Every other time when you're walking, you can make any dua that you want. You can recite Quran if you like. You can pick up the Mus'haf and recite from it. Anything that you wish. Alright, some of the mistakes that some people fall into when they're standing here at Safa is some people, they mistakenly raise their hand towards the Kaaba. This is not a place of raising your hand. You don't need to say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, nor Allahu Akbar. You don't need to wipe this. There's nothing special about it. It was made maybe 100 years ago or less. The mountain, obviously you can't go there anyway, but it's not recommended to touch it or to seek blessings from it. The only thing you do here is what the Prophet ﷺ taught us from reading those specific adhkar and making your du'as. This is your beginning point, and you need to go to the other mountain, Marwa. Another thing that I need to point out is you don't need to walk around. So in the upper floors, 1st floor, 2nd floor, sometimes you need to go around because that's the only way, the queue. But sometimes when it's not busy, you can just take a left from here and continue going to Marwa. You don't have to go around. You face the Kaaba and you make your du'as when you're at Safa. So we're here, we're starting at Safa. An important point that I want to mention is we count from Safa to Marwa as 1 round. And on the way back from Marwa to Safa, that's the 2nd unit. They're going from Safa to Marwa 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and then you end up in Marwa. You finish at Marwa. Make sure you don't do 1 full lap back to Safa and count it as 1. We'll be doing 14 laps. That's not what's required. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 at Marwa. Nice and easy. Let's go. So when we are going between Safa and Marwa, specifically for men, it's recommended for them to run between these 2 green lights. So you're going to see the men behind me running, so you run as well. With regards to wearing sandals or sliders when you're doing your walking between Safa and Marwa, then it's allowed for you to wear them. It's not sunnah, and it's not sunnah to either wear or not to wear. Remember, just 100 years ago, there was no marble here. It was ground and people used to wear their shoes. So we don't say it's sunnah, and it's not sunnah to wear or not to wear your sandals. It's your choice, what's easy for you, and it's probably better and easier for you to wear your sandals and slides. It's allowed for you to pick up a Mus'haf and to recite Quran when you're going between Safa and Marwa, because it's a remembrance of Allah at the end of the day. The best remembrance. So as we said, between Safa and Marwa, we're going to be repeating the same dhikr that we mentioned at the beginning without the verse. Starting from Allahu Akbar 3 times. At the end point, we finish our Umrah. It is not recommended to pray 2 rak'ahs after you finish your Marwa. It's not sunnah and it's not recommended. It's not being authentically mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ, so we don't pray. Once we finish, then we exit and we head to our final part of performing Umrah. So we're here at the barbers at our last stage of Umrah, which is cutting your hair. For the men, it's recommended for them to shave their hair completely off, and that is the better thing to do. But you can also trim your hair. The Prophet ﷺ made dua for the one that shaves their hair 3 times, and he made dua for the one that trims their hair 1 time. As for the sisters, then when they go back to their hotel or where they're staying, they can get a pair of scissors. They grab their hair, and the back of their hair, they put it all to the back, and the back of it, they cut the size of a thumbnail. The size of a thumbnail, a little bit, they cut it, and that's enough. And with that, you've finished and completed your Umrah. May Allah accept it from us and from you, and give you many more trips and journeys like this.